Hi, I'm Turnipseed, and I've chosen to do my project on strychnine. Let's get on it. Mm, What is strychnine? Strychnine is basically a plant alkaloid that is commonly derived from the seeds of both the Strychnos nuts vomica, which is a tree that is indigenous to the South Indian subcontinent, as well as the specimen Strychnos ignati, though specifically it's derived from the seeds of the beans that are produced by that plant. Um, Strychnine is a particularly odorless, colorless type of compound. It's very bitter tasting. It acts as a competitive inhibitor for the postsynaptic glycine receptor, which basically means it's going to mostly be targeting the spinal cord when it inhibits. For this reason, it's typically deemed a spinal poison. Strychnine poisoning can occur through either inhalation, oral intake, or it can be given intravenously, which means it can be given through like a needle or a shot per se. It's very rare that this poison will actually occur through topical application, like if you were to like put some on your skin or something of that sort, but it's not impossible. The molecular formula for strychnine is C21H22N2O2, and it is heavily known to be insoluble in water, but it is also soluble in alcohols, organic solvents, think acetone, and it's only partially soluble in ether. So yeah. Oh, and in the corner right here, in the bottom left corner, you can kind of see just put a structure of what strychnine looks like. Okay, historical information. In 1818, two French chemists by the names of Joseph Bien-Aimé Caventou and Pierre-Joseph Pelletier discovered strychnine in the seeds of beans that came from this mountain climbing shrub called Saint Ignatius, which was a plant that fell into the Strychnos genus. And this in particular is the same plant I mentioned earlier, actually, the Strychnos ignati. It was only then in 1818 that strychnine started to become properly acknowledged for its contributing factor to strychnosis toxicity overall. It's kind of weird though because the specimen, the the unpurified extract of this specimen was already well known in society for like medicinal uses as well as illegal uses on top of that. Um, Actually, based off of historical records dating back to like 1640s, this alkaloid was already well known to kill birds as well as like stray dogs and stray cats off the streets of Europe. Um, It wasn't until 1946 that the structure of strychnine was fully determined and completed by Sir Robert Robinson, and then later physically synthesized in a laboratory by Robert B. Woodworth in 1954. This particular synthesization is still highly regarded as one of the most famous occurrences to ever happen in organic chemistry. It earned Woodward a Nobel Peace Prize. It also earned Robert Robinson his own Nobel Peace Prize for constructing the 3D structure of strychnine. Strychnine was one of the most tricky synthesizations I think that's been out there for a while now, especially biosynthesis of it. It's a very tricky process. Very, very tricky. But it was a very big forward step for organic chemistry, so it's highly regarded still, obviously. Strychnine has a very notable history of being used in the United States to craft a variety of things, namely performance enhancing drugs, rodenticides, poisons, and medicines. It wasn't until this last century or so that the usage of strychnine has actually begun to slow down and dwindle. It took till 1962 for the United States Food and Drug Administration to officially ban strychnine from the use from being used in foods and medicines. However, it is still heavily prevalent in outdoor pesticides as well as in street drugs such as cocaine and LSD. This compound is also known to be present in several herbal remedies denoting from the Southeast Asia, and it has an earned name of slang nut or slang Thai nut in Cambodia and Thailand. The general kinetics of strychnine, uh, typically almost instantaneously, strychnine is absorbed by the body through the gastrointestinal tract, respiratory tract, and or the mucous membranes. And this all happens in a matter of minutes, becoming very obvious and easily detectable in human urine pretty much like right after it's ingested. The half-life for absorption is a relative 15 minutes, whilst the half-life for metabolism into the body system is 10 hours. Individuals who have died from strychnine overdose have a very high concentration left over in their body in particularly three different areas: kidneys, blood, and their liver, especially. This is due to the fact that strychnine is primarily metabolized in the liver's uh, microsomal system, and the kidneys are typically put to the task of ridding the body of any type of toxin. In particular, the toxin would be strychnine in this case, and it's going to do that through means of excretion. The lethal oral dose ratio for strychnine is a probable 1.2 to 2 milligrams per kilogram. This kind of helps some researchers establish that there is a mere 5 to 120 milligram strychnine um, dose that is enough to kill a human, an average adult human at that. So, yeah. This particular graph expresses the medium lethal dose for both humans and smaller domesticatable mammalian animals who are also shown to have a similar susceptibility to strychnine. In particular, towards the middle is where you can see the different ranges for human susceptibility, like the median lethal dose range. And you can kind of see how it varies. So don't take what I put for set in stone because, as you know, lethal your lethal dose won't necessarily be somebody else's lethal dose. There will always be other factors that will affect what is considered their lethal dose versus your lethal dose. So just take that grain of salt. The general inhibition mechanism for strychnine is just like mentioned before, it acts as a competitive inhibitor for the postsynaptic glycine receptor, which is most central at the spinal cord. As a primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, glycine is one of the most widely distributed as well as used neurotransmitters within the entirety of the central nervous system. It's a key component to allow the system to function properly. Uh, Glycine, when successfully inhibited, it manages to uncontrollably stimulate the postsynaptic neurons, which lead to involuntary muscle movements as well as contractions. Because of this, these muscle contractions can get so severe to the point to where it basically looks as though the patients are having a conscious seizure, like they know what's happening and they're aware for it. And it's kind of a scary thought when you think about it. Um, but yeah, that's the result of this inhibition mechanism. It's not a good one. The metabolizing of strychnine into the biological system of a human being can end up having the following symptoms occur. You can be subject to rigid arms and legs with a strong stiffness in the neck. You can have pain and soreness in your muscles, restless, very anxious behavior, dark urine. You have mood swings, like one day you might be agitated, you might be apprehensive or fearful the next. Um, it's like you're aware of these symptoms happening and you know it's not you, but you're aware that you're doing it and you can't really help yourself that you're doing it. There's also a difficulty with breathing, and the most major and biggest part of these symptoms is the fact that you will have violent, painful, very frequent, short back-to-back cycles of muscle spasms. This is only like if you're exposed to strychnine at a low or like moderate dose. If you were exposed to a strychnine dose that was of higher origin, you could be facing near immediate brain death or particularly respiratory failure due to a paralysis in your respiratory tract because of how bad the muscle spasms can get. So there is a very high chance of death if you are exposed to a high dose of strychnine overall. This graph in particular refers to the overall ingestion of strychnine in the human body and how it affects specific organ systems as well as individual organs themselves and the respective symptoms that occur because of such. It's important to note that when you look over this, the prodromal stage is basically referring to the initial exposure, whether that be the 15 to 30-minute period before convulsions occur when strychnine is ingested, or whether that be the 14 to 15-hour period after a topical application. The clinical stage in particular refers to the moment where these violent, repetitive, and short convulsions start to cycle through and through. And that's pretty much where you can see that these symptoms that are being faced start to amp up. Um, in particular, the central nervous system, like in your predominant stage, you're restless, you're apprehensive, but as soon as you get to your clinical, you're actually having tremors, short-term memory, you're getting very violent muscle spasms, and it's starting to get up there. It's starting to ramp up on you. So, yeah. Are there any viable treatments for strychnine poisoning? No, there's nothing that is quite definable yet. However, as long as you're making sure to get yourself hospitalized like immediately after the exposure happens, you should be fine. There are two different ways that I know of, however, that could help get that poison out of your system. You could do the oral flushing of activated charcoal through your digestive tract, and that way the charcoal is able to pick up any leftover or unabsorbed poison from the digestive tract. Uh, in likeness, you could also get the gastric lavage or the potassium permanganate and get those solutions flushed through your system for the sake of oxidizing the poison out of your system. Uh, there are downsides to this type of gastrointestinal decontamination, however, because this brings a rise to the possibility of you suffering seizures. So there's always that downside you kind of have to think about when you do certain things to this extent. But I mean, if that's your only option, honestly, you just have to take it. And yeah, this was my last slide. That's it. Thank you guys for listening. Okay.